It happened in broad daylight. A black man, dressed simply in slacks and a button-up shirt, was walking down a busy city sidewalk. People were rushing past him, cars humming nearby, the usual buzz of urban life. He wasn't doing anything suspicious, just existing, just breathing. But to one police officer that was enough. Without warning, the officer shoved him against a wall and kicked him to the ground. Bystanders gasped. Phones came out. But what happened next? No one could have predicted it. Because the man on the ground wasn't just a civilian. He was the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Welcome to Tailcraft, where we bring you true stories that shock, inspire, and force us to ask the hard questions. If you're visiting for the first time, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe because these stories matter. Here's something to think about as we begin. What if you were in his shoes? Would staying calm even matter? Would the truth even protect you? Today's story is more than just a dramatic twist. It's a mirror held up to the way power, race, and perception collide in America. A police officer acting on bias escalates a situation that never should have existed. A man wrongly assaulted in public holds his composure, not because he's afraid but because he knows exactly what's at stake. And when his badge falls out and the officer sees what he's just done, everything changes in an instant. But by then the damage is already done. We're going to walk through every moment of this incident, step by step. From the initial confrontation to the shocking realization, to the fallout that lit up the media and rocked a police department to its core. This story isn't just about one mistake, it's about what that mistake reveals. It's about how easily respect can be denied when someone doesn't look like they hold power. It's about how many people don't get the chance to pull out a badge. And it's about what happens when they finally do. So buckle in. This isn't just a tale of injustice, it's a tale of truth, exposure, and one officer's worst mistake. Because when you treat someone like they don't matter, you'd better hope they're not the most powerful law enforcement official in the country. Let's get into it. It was just past noon in a busy downtown district. Office workers filled the sidewalks during lunch rush. Food trucks lined the street corners, and the scent of roasted peanuts and hot dogs lingered in the air. Among the crowd, a tall black man in his early 50s strolled calmly, carrying a leather briefcase and sipping coffee. His posture was confident, but relaxed, just another professional navigating the city's heartbeat. But for one nearby patrol officer, that wasn't how it looked. The officer had been standing on the opposite corner, watching the man. Something about him, his presence, his clothing, or maybe just his skin, triggered suspicion. He radioed in a vague comment about someone matching a description, though no bolo had been called. There was no warrant, no crime, just a hunch and a bias. As the man waited to cross the street, the officer approached quickly from behind. "Hey, you," he barked, already closing the distance. The man turned, surprised but polite. "Can I help you, officer?" he asked. His voice was calm, his tone measured. But to the cop, that calmness read as defiance. "You loitering around here? You got ID?" the officer asked sharply. The man raised an eyebrow. "I'm walking to a meeting. I didn't realize that required permission." That was all it took. Without warning, the officer shoved the man hard in the chest, causing him to stumble back. A few heads turned. A couple of people slowed their pace. One woman started recording. "Get your hands out of your pockets," the officer screamed, though the man's hands were holding only his briefcase and coffee. He instinctively stepped backward, trying to de-escalate. "Sir, I'm not resisting," he said. "There's no reason for this." But the officer wasn't listening. Fueled by ego, misunderstanding, and something uglier, he kicked the man's leg out from under him. The man hit the ground with a heavy thud, his briefcase flying open, papers scattering like wind-blown leaves across the sidewalk. The coffee cup rolled into the gutter. Gasps erupted from the small crowd forming nearby. Someone yelled, "What are you doing?" The man groaned, adjusting himself upright, hands raised. "I'm not a threat," he said again, more firmly this time. "I'm not resisting." But the officer wasn't hearing words anymore. He was operating on adrenaline and authority. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he shouted, now reaching for his cuffs. Then in the chaos, something small slid from the man's inner coat pocket. A badge. It hit the pavement with a distinct clink, spinning once before coming to rest just inches from the officer's boot. A gold badge, polished, unmistakable. The crowd saw it. The officer saw it. It was engraved with the seal of the United States Department of Justice. And the words that changed everything. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Director. Time froze. The officer blinked, suddenly unsure of everything. He stared at the badge, then at the man he had just kicked to the ground. The man slowly rose to his feet, dusted himself off and picked up the badge. He looked the officer directly in the eye and said calmly, "I was hoping you'd ask for ID." The crowd, once stunned into silence, erupted with murmurs. Phones pointed. Cameras zoomed. People began to record more aggressively now, sensing something historic, something ugly and important unfolding in real time. The officer's hands dropped from his cuffs. He stammered, trying to regain control. "Sir, I didn't know. I thought." The man cut him off with a look. Not rage. Not revenge. Just a quiet, piercing disappointment. "You didn't ask. You assumed." Another man stepped forward from the crowd, a former Marine, judging by his jacket. "You just assaulted the director of the FBI, man. You're finished." But the FBI chief didn't shout. He didn't posture. He simply pulled out his phone, dialed a number from memory and held it to his ear. "Yes. This is Director Marcus Hale," he said, still brushing dirt from his sleeve. "I need a team dispatched to my location. Civilian assault. Uniformed officer. I'll remain on site." The call ended. He looked at the officer again. "You may want to stay right here." Officer Mitchell stood frozen. His heart pounded in his ears as the man he had kicked, a man he had humiliated in public, calmly reholstered his badge and adjusted the crease in his coat. There was no yelling. No panic. Just that same calm, composed demeanor, now reinforced by a name that held real weight, Director Marcus Hale. The highest-ranking law enforcement official in the country. The head of the FBI. The silence on the street was deafening. Onlookers watched in disbelief as the balance of power shifted completely. The officer, once barking orders, now seemed like a rookie facing his first major mistake. His hands twitched at his sides, unsure whether to salute, apologize, or just run. "Director. I didn't recognize you," he stammered, sweat collecting under his collar. "I didn't mean." "You didn't ask," Hale replied, his voice measured, firm. "That's the point." Just then, a black SUV turned the corner and came to a smooth halt behind the police cruiser. Two suited agents stepped out, their badges visible, their presence unmistakable. The taller one approached Hale with quiet urgency. "Director, are you all right?" "I'm fine," Hale said without breaking eye contact with the officer. "But we have a situation." Officer Mitchell backed up a step. "Look, I made a bad call. But I thought he was suspicious." "He wasn't responding clearly." "He responded clearly," Hale said. "You were too focused on control to hear it. You didn't see me as a citizen. You saw me as a threat. And when I didn't show fear, you got aggressive." The younger agent leaned toward Hale. "Local PD command wants to speak with you directly. They're sending someone now." Hale nodded but didn't take his eyes off the officer. "What's your name and badge number?" Mitchell hesitated, then slowly gave it. Hale repeated it aloud to one of the agents, who began typing into a device. "This will be handled through the proper channels," Hale said. "You'll get your chance to explain everything. On the record." The crowd was still filming. A woman nearby whispered, "He's done." Another man shook his head and said, "If this is how they treat the FBI chief, what chance do the rest of us have?" Hale heard that, and he let it hang in the air. As more agents arrived, securing the area and quietly gathering statements from witnesses, Officer Mitchell stood to the side, now more suspect than enforcer. His earlier confidence was gone. Every word, every shove, every decision from 5 minutes earlier now played back in his head like a bad dream. But there was no rewind. No undo button. Hale walked toward his briefcase, knelt, and calmly picked up the scattered papers. An agenda for a federal meeting, briefing notes, a folder marked confidential. He tucked them back in without a word. Then he turned one last time toward the officer. "I suggest you remain here and cooperate fully. The FBI takes assault on federal personnel very seriously. Whether you knew who I was or not doesn't change what happened." And with that, he walked toward the SUV, not with anger, but with purpose. The man who had been kicked to the ground had just stood taller than anyone in the city. Clips of Officer Mitchell kicking a man to the ground had already begun circulating online, but now the headlines had context and shock value. "Cop assaults FBI chief in broad daylight." The video ran on every major news network, shown in slow motion with analysts breaking down every second of the encounter. Within hours, it was more than just viral. It was historic. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #JusticeForHale, #ProfilingPower, and #even the FBI dominated trending pages. Celebrities, politicians, veterans, and everyday citizens weighed in. Some expressed rage. Others heartbreak. But most shared one common thought. If this could happen to the head of the FBI, what hope do the rest of us have? The mayor held a hastily called press conference, flanked by grim-faced city officials. "We are deeply troubled by the events that unfolded today," she said, carefully avoiding direct blame. "There will be a full investigation. We are cooperating fully with federal authorities." But the public wasn't buying the polished soundbites. Officer Mitchell, once an unnoticed face on the force, was now infamous. His badge number was circulating online. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, demanding accountability, holding signs that read, "Badge is not equal to immunity, and power shouldn't be a shield for hate." The pressure was mounting fast, and not just from the public. Within the FBI, Director Hale's team moved swiftly. A formal federal complaint was filed within 24 hours, backed by video evidence and multiple eyewitness accounts. Officer Mitchell was placed on immediate unpaid leave, pending both internal review and possible federal charges. His department scrambled to manage the optics, but the narrative had already taken hold. Another racist cop. Another abuse of power. Another near disaster avoided only by status. Director Hale remained largely silent, until day 3. He stepped in front of a podium in a packed press briefing room. Cameras flashed. The room fell silent. No notes. No teleprompter. Just truth. "I didn't reveal who I was because I expected special treatment," Hale began. "I revealed who I was because I knew if I didn't, I might not walk away. That's the reality millions of Americans face every single day, those without a badge, without a title, without backup. That's why this matters." His words were steady, deliberate. He didn't point fingers. He didn't call for vengeance. Instead, he called for truth. This is not about one officer. This is about a culture that rewards aggression and punishes dignity. A culture where power is measured not by restraint, but by who can shout the loudest or act the fastest. That must change. The room erupted in applause, something rare in a law enforcement briefing. It wasn't just because Hale had survived, it was because he had exposed something far larger than a single act of misconduct. He had forced the country to confront a truth it often avoids, that injustice isn't about who you are, it's about who they think you are. In the weeks that followed, real consequences took shape. The city launched an independent review board to investigate use of force cases. Officers were pulled into mandatory de-escalation training. The FBI announced a new initiative to monitor and report racially biased policing incidents involving federal employees. Other departments around the country began quietly re-evaluating their procedures. No one wanted to be the next viral headline. And yet, for all the change, one question continued to echo. What if he hadn't been the FBI chief? What if he'd just been another black man on the street without a badge, without backup, without a camera? Would anyone have believed him? Would anyone have listened? That question struck deeper than any statement or press release ever could. It became the heart of the protests, the center of the conversation, the haunting truth behind every tweet and news segment. Because the badge had saved Marcus Hale. But what saves the millions who don't have one? In the end, it wasn't just about a kick. It wasn't just about one officer, one man, or even one badge. It was about what we all saw that day, how quickly power can be abused when judgment is clouded by prejudice. How someone who's done everything right, earned every ounce of respect, can still be knocked to the ground because of the color of their skin. It didn't matter that he was the FBI chief. In that moment, to Officer Mitchell, he was just another black man to be handled, not heard. Director Marcus Hale survived that encounter. His badge saved him. His title bought him time. But what if the cameras hadn't been rolling? What if there had been no crowd? What if that badge had never slipped from his coat? Too many times those what-ifs end in tragedy. In silence. In names we remember only because they became hashtags. That's why this story matters. It shines a light on something we're often too afraid to admit, that systemic bias doesn't pause for credentials. That no title, no resume, no years of service can outshine a single harmful assumption. And unless we challenge that system, unless we confront it directly, it won't stop at Hale. It will continue through traffic stops, on sidewalks, in parks, in stores, in classrooms. But awareness is just the first step. We can't stop at shock or sympathy. We must demand better. From those in power. From institutions. From ourselves. And that brings us to you, the viewer, the listener, the storyteller in your own right. What would you have done if you witnessed that moment on the street? Would you have filmed it? Spoken up? Stayed silent? Would you recognize your own biases if they appeared? This isn't just a story, it's a mirror. and the reflection can be uncomfortable. But discomfort is where growth begins. So if this story moved you, if it made you think or made you feel something, don't let it end here. Small blue diamond, like this video so others can discover it. Small blue diamond, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Small blue diamond, subscribe to Tailcraft for more powerful stories that don't just inform, but challenge. Small blue diamond, and most importantly, comment below. What would you do if you were in Director Hale's shoes, or if you were standing just a few feet away when it happened? Let's keep the conversation alive. Let's hold systems accountable. And let's use stories, not just to entertain, but to spark real, lasting change. Thank you for watching. This has been Tailcraft, where stories reveal truth. Until next time.